And if I'm Wizards of the Coast, I want to market my books to the majority of players, which are players as
Yeah.
opposed to dungeon masters.
Yep. I can't understand why they don't do this.
Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns and Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're gonna be talking about some of Sam's opinions here on why D&D books are failing. That's a
Failing,
provocative title there.
yeah, it's failing, I think, the larger D&D audience. I don't think they're hitting a wide player base, and there are some reasons for that. And I don't know if I have a solution to these problems, specifically for Wizards of the Coast, but I've got some opinions and thoughts. And with Eva Vecna just coming out um, with a whimper, it seems like uh, this seems a good time to talk about it.
No, when you say failing, are you talking about just failing us, the players, or failing like financially?
Both, like
Okay.
from my understanding, and this might be wrong, commenters let me know if this is not the case. I feel like I've heard loosely that the adventure books don't tend to sell that well, and that a lot of the printed books that are outside of like four specific books don't perform as well as Woods of the Coast would like. And I think there are some very clear reasons to why that's the case, and I would hope that they address some of my concerns and problems in the future and maybe print less books of higher quality. That would be what I would hope to see. But we can get into it.
All right, let's get into it.
So the first of my major gripes with most of the specifically like the adventure modules that are printed today. I don't think they're good adventures from a structural perspective. So by that I mean if I have not opened any of the books before and felt confident in everything that was in it that I could just run it without extra guidance, without extra steps. The real big ones to me that like set this course in motion was the Rise of Tiamat books, so Tyranny of Dragons, Rise of Tiamat, Toward the Dragon Queen, and Prince of the Apocalypse. Both those books present you with this idea that they're like sandboxy, because Princess in particular does this, where they go, oh, well, the players want to go consult fight the elemental air cultists instead of the fire cultists. They just keep going down this rabbit hole instead of the other rabbit hole. And then the encounter balance is designed for players 5 levels higher than them, and people get steamrolled. So it doesn't make sense that they couldn't continue this way. They players have to go around and do all of the level 1 stuff, then all the level 2 stuff, then all the level 3 stuff, etc., etc. And it ends up not working on just like a structural level. So there are genuinely you can find modules on places like Drive Through RPG and the D&D version of that, whatever, I can't remember the name of it, that literally
Mhm.
are just guides to playing these adventures. Which is these adventures are so bad in that they're structurally so inept. You have to find someone else who has restructured them or given you a walkthrough on how to structure them, which should be the point of the book. So that's my first major complaint is with what they're selling is not really working. There have been problems with it historically. There are issues with it out the gate where, like, if I want to run this as a DM, I have to do a lot more work anyway. What is the point of this then? If it's not saving me time or energy or effort, if it's not working as written, how am I supposed to run these things and find success? Now,
Well,
this
have
might
you
be
run
personal
them?
gripes, but yeah, I ran Prince of the Apocalypse, Tomb of Annihilation. I've run both of those modules. Princess was a nightmare. I very quickly deviated from it, and we just did our own thing because that's what you do. Um, uh, the Tomb of Annihilation was a little bit better. It was more just like open hex crawls with a series of encounters of around a specific level range that the players should go
Mhm.
engage with. That was a lot better streamlined as far as like navigation goes, but there were still a lot of like holes in that. There were still a lot of areas that were mentioned by name that didn't give you really anything to do with it, and the book was short enough that they should have. The book was short enough that the Lost City of Omu should have been nestled within it, and a lot of other big splashy set pieces should have been within that book to give you sort of clear direction and objective and stuff like that. I've had gripes with the adventure books since they've ever been printed. I've read through most of them to some level, and the adventures have problems. I've heard people who have given initial reviews on Eva Vecna or Eva of Ruin, which I don't have, say similar things. And it's apparently escalated more so because it's upper level play. And if you just say no to the main quest line, maybe nothing happens. So that's not ideal. So yeah,
No,
first gripe, books don't work.
that's a big one.
Yeah. Second gripe, still we'll cover adventure modules for a second. Who are these for? Like, they're not for everyone. They're not for most people. They're for new DMs, experienced DMs. What specific person wants this, and why are we printing books for only that small of a demographic, right? Like, Bob,
Well,
you're not a DM, right?
no, I'm not.
You play with most people. The people you play with most aren't DMs, right? Just
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
by numbers.
Yes.
So the majority of the market isn't looking for these books. Have you played any of the adventure models? Have DMs run you through full 15 level adventure modules before?
We played through Ghost of Saltmarsh for a little bit.
A little bit. Did you get past, like, how much is a little bit? I'm curious.
I don't know within the scope of the entire book because I don't have the book, so I didn't read through the whole adventure. And I'm not sure. We probably deviated from that pretty quickly anyway. So I really can't say. But typically, we just kind of do our own thing.
That's
And,
what most D&D tables, I think,
yeah.
do. And that makes me have this big old question mark as to why we're still printing books like Rime of the Salt Maiden. So it gives me a big old question mark. We're printing books like Vecna Eve of Ruin, right? This is a specific adventure for a specific tier of play that most people aren't fishing anyway. And I don't, other than collectors like me that hoard the things for no good reason than to hoard them, I don't see the value in these products whenever so few people that even could run them wouldn't. Right, so many few people that play D&D would choose to buy and use this product, especially when the product doesn't work. So,
well, I mean, to answer your earlier question, I have to assume they're more for experienced DMs than new DMs because if you, as an experienced DM, are having this much trouble getting them to work, then that would be exponentially bad for a new DM. Correct?
well, yeah, I would guess that would be the case. So it leads me to this general thought process. I think there isn't a good reason to continue printing these kinds of adventure books, especially on this
Dungeons
at
and
this
Dragons,
quantity.
though, you have to have adventures.
So there are other models that we've seen other companies do that I like a lot better. So, for example, Paizo for most of Pathfinder's life did adventure paths, and these were like $5, $10, $15 booklets that was a single adventure, and then they serialized it, right? So you had 15 worth of these. You could pick any one of them up and it'd be an adventure you can sit down and play with. That adventure is within its scope, and they all come together to make this arc. And I didn't run through those. This just seems like a better premise to me, at least.
I like that better. Yeah.
You can relate to it, you can jump in where you want, you can jump out where you want. It seems really flexible. And if I'm like dipping my toes into DMing for the first time, I'm not gonna drop $65 on an adventure path. I'll drop $10 on one. Sure, let's see what happens. This is easier for me to grasp. I don't have to read that much. I don't have to read the whole scope of the book to try and get a grasp on anything. That seems like a better direction for this to go than big, sprawling 5, 10, 15 level kinds of campaigns. Now, I know people that are out there have had great times with things like Dragon Heist, great times with things like Curse of Strahd. I'm not saying they're all trash. This isn't me saying this is universally everything they've ever made has always been terrible. I think a lot of them have large flaws.
I'm glad you cleared that up because I think in our comment sections that tends to be how some people view your perspective on everything.
Sure.
This is all trash. I hate everything.
I give a lot of 2s and 3s on this channel, and that means I'm into it. Yeah, it's fine. It's not great, but it's good. Whatever. But yeah, my general perspective on a lot of the Wizards content is it is missing some marks. This can move us into the other kind of book. There's like 2 more kinds of books they release. I guess 3-ish. There's setting books, there are player option books, and then there are like adventure collections. I think the adventure collections are close to what we were just talking about, right? Close to those Path of the Week adventure path $15 things. I think those are a better way to handle, especially like if you want to sell nostalgia, the nostalgic adventures, things like Quest for the Infinite Staircase, things like Keys in the Golden Vault, or the ones I've actually run 2 of the adventures out of is Tales from the Yawning Portal. I love that book. The dungeons in them are relatively straightforward. Now I think there are better ways to organize the information than they're doing. They're keeping it very much like traditional second, third edition, just paragraphs and paragraphs of text, and the organization, it's hard to find where important details are. It's printed like a book, not like an adventure, I would expect to be, right? Like, it doesn't feel like a game piece. It feels more like a novel. I'd rather it be like a game piece because that's what it is. But that's, a little bit more nitpicking maybe for later. I think the adventure setting books do a little bit better of a job with the objective of, here's an adventure, sit down, play it, plug into any world you want. It gives you a taste of, this is how we run things in Wizards of the Coast. I think they're better. I still think there's too many of them. I think that we are getting such a large quantity of these adventure books, adventure paths. There's just not time for real human beings to play any of it, or not play any of it, play all of it. And I would expect,
Well,
I
you
would
don't
want
have to
some
play
people.
all of it.
If I'm the kind of person that would want to, right? I want to get excited for the next adventure module. I want to get excited for the next adventure book. I have a hard time doing that when I go, oh, there's the 6 others that I haven't been able to touch.
See, I'm the opposite. I think if I was going to use these at all, I'd be more excited to know that there's always going to be more to play.
It's always unrelated though, right? Like, that more to play has nothing to do with the stuff that you or might be playing through.
Well,
I have
it
a
could
hard
be.
time getting excited about that.
Yeah.
Every single D&D adventure printed outside of Rise of Tiamat and Tyranny of Dragons, from my understanding, is entirely separate of each other, right? Curse of Straw doesn't lead into a different adventure book. Like, Eve of Ruin, the newest one, isn't a specific endpoint, from my understanding. It's just an endpoint. So, like,
They should have it. Yeah, I'd like it if that was an option, though. These could be interconnected if you choose to make them so, and if they gave you the tools to do that. Like, all right, I got this little $5 adventure pack. This is just I'm using this to build a world of my own, and the guy that lives in this manor is related to the wizard in this tower over here with the other adventure pack. And that could be relevant if I want it to be.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
That's, I guess, an entirely different strategy that is not being implemented right now.
Yeah. It all comes back around to that moral, right? Where the current strategy for their main adventure books, I don't think is working. It's just lots of reasons. Maybe the adventure books are slightly better, but I would love them to be serialized out. I would love them to be like, here is just Tomb of Annihilation for $15 to $20. Like, it's just,
Well, see that
that's just the adventure. You can pick it up
like
off the
it'd be
shelf.
better for them too, because I mean, if you got like a $65 book or something with all these adventures in it, you could probably make more money, selling 10 adventures for $10 each.
Yeah, I mean,
little paperbacks.
I would guess that they've had people that are doing the numbers, and there's always the question, right, of like, how many more people do you reach at a lower price point, and is that worth it? But I do think the quality of their product suffers whenever this is something I've always been complaining about. The books are getting shorter and the price is going up, and that's the inverse. Like, the longer books demand a higher price point because there's more content in them, assumedly. Here's another thing I can complain about. The actual content printed in these books is kind of booty. Remember the Create Spelljamming Hell, Bob?
Yes.
Remember how they call that a spell?
I do.
That doesn't count. It doesn't count as a spell. It's just not what it is. And they split up Plane Chase or Planescape to be these 3 separate books that are all really short, just so they could justify a $130 price tag on it, whenever it should just be one book that is still shorter in total length than the player's handbook. So, like, the books being shorter and the quality not improving, at least from a like adventure running perspective, I don't think is a direction that's sustainable. I don't know who's going to keep buying these books if they don't have a use. And I don't think any of the modern adventure books are having any real use for most people, for most players especially. Now, that kind of tails us into player books. I think those are the area which I wish more books were player books. I wish more books had player content. If I'm a DM trying to get my players excited to play in Icewind Dale, I'd love to have 10 new player options to excite my players to play in Icewind Dale. Right?
And if I'm Wizards of the Coast, I want to market my books to the majority of players, which are, well, players
Yeah.
as opposed to dungeon masters.
Yep. I can't understand why they don't do this. I can't understand why we don't get paired player options and a large quantity of them with the printed adventures and stuff like that, with the printed setting books. We get a few, we get a sprinkling, and it always feels like it's not enough. When it, like Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, right, is this big, expansive new world, diving into one of Magic's core settings. This is not just something that D&D wants. It's something that Wizards of the Coast as a whole IP wants. There's like 6 player options in that entire book, and half of them are reprints. What? What are we doing here? This should have full new subclasses for every single one of the guilds. This should have 10 new, 12 new, 20 new races. This should be as expansive of a player option as Xanathar's Guide to Everything is for the specific setting. And it not being that, it makes the book less valuable to everyone, right? If I'm a player, do I want to buy that book just because I'm playing a Simic hybrid? No.
No. My initial thought is that they want to be careful before introducing these kind of new player options, because once you do, then players can mix it up in multi-class with existing options and crazy new powerful ways, and we can't stuff that genie back into the bottle. But I don't think they're thinking that through that much, considering some of the other player options we already have.
Here's my perspective. Even if they do, I would argue the game is more fun for more people if there are more bananas powerful busted options in it. And I would argue that the game likely is going to get more engagement if more stuff excites more people, right? There'll be the die card people like you and me that will go through every single new book release, that will go through every single new spell release, that will rate everything as critically as we can. There will be people that take it further than I do, right? People that are better at optimizing than I will, that will crunch the numbers, that will sit down and go, wow, this is completely and utterly busted. I can't believe they printed this. At the end of the day, the most exciting thing that happened from Strixhaven and Curriculum Chaos, a really cool setting, is a single first level enchantment spell that keeps that book on, like, in people's minds. People think about the Strixhaven book because of Silvery Barbs. It's the whole reason the book has any amount of anyone knows that it exists whatsoever. There isn't an equivalent for that for Guildmaster's Guide. There's not an equivalent of that for even things like Fizzbans. Fizzban has a couple cool options like Drake Warden. It's just not nearly enough to drive excitement. It's not nearly enough to compel anyone to go out and buy this book. I'm not going to buy Strixhaven for the one busted spell. I'm going to Google what the one busted spell is and stick it on my character sheet, right? But if there's 40 busted spells in there, if there's 5 busted spells and 40 interesting spells in there, I want that book now. I want that on my shelf. I want to be able to pull it out and browse and peruse and use them. I don't just want to Google it now. I actually want to feel like a reason to reach for it. Give me reasons for players to reach for books. That's what I'm asking. We don't have that right now.
I want to learn about it on the Caverns and Creatures YouTube channel.
Me too. To close things off, I want to touch on the last main book category that I do actually have some complaints for still, and that is just the player option stuff. I really think, and I doubt they'll do it, but I hope they do for the D&D next edition. I really want them to shorten the text on player options. I really want them to use keywords. I really want them to give us shorthand for some things to make it more digestible for everyone playing the game. I would love to see.
Give me an example of what you're talking about.
So, for example, if something forces something to make a saving throw, I would love to see them shorthand when creatures within the area make a dexterity saving throw with a DC equal to this certain number. I would love that to be shorthanded to bold dexterity save, : and then the text.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's what I would like. I'd like them to cut down on the total amount of words for clarity's sake. And I don't think it's going to happen. It is one of the main big elements of other game systems that I much prefer to D&D. Gamist language is useful. Using shorthand is useful. Give things like the spell slows effects. Codify that as a condition. Like, shorthand a lot more of the commonly used effects and abilities in this game to make it easier to digest. That's something that I would like them to do as well. Otherwise, the player option books, I don't have that many grievances with. I think their decisions to reprint old content in them, I find baffling, and given how short they are, I think it's kind of inexcusable. But, That's
not so much baffling. That's probably the reason.
it's lazy and easy.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't get why they needed to they felt the need to do that, especially if they're not going to errata things and like fix things or improve things in some fashion. Like with a good example being if they reprinted Purple Dragon Knight as Cavalier, right? Did that get a reprint?
Mm.
One of the bad Sword Coast Adventures Sword Coast Adventures Guide options got reprinted, and they just left it exactly as it was. And I'm just thinking, like, if you're gonna go through the trouble of reprinting it, fix it. Or if you're gonna fix an option like they did with Ranger, fix all of it. Don't just fix the first feature in Beastmaster Ranger and leave the rest of it to be non-features. It feels lazy. It feels cheap. I'm tired of cheap.
Well, yeah, and it's one thing if this is like a mom and pop operation, running this out of their basement or whatever. But this is a big corporation. I mean, you're just talking about finite number of man hours to make these fixes and changes, and then that extrapolates into like hundreds of thousands of book sales. Like, there's no real excuse for it.
It doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons why, as per the title of this video, I think the D&D books are failing and not performing well, assuming that is the case. There's a lot of practices that seem lazy and predatory, specifically like the Planescape stuff. That's one book. That's less than one book, and it's priced at 2.5 books. Like, we can hope that the next edition is going to get better. I doubt that's going to be the case. I have a hunch that we're only going to see continued repeated failures and degrading higher price point super art module or super art, like, alternate art cover for this you can get only in game stores, that kind of stuff, that being the direction they try and sell things at. I'm all for customizability. I'm all for the flashy expensive stuff for some people, but like the core product needs to be better, and there's a lot of problems with it, and they need to get their shit together, because as is, I don't think I'm buying an adventure book ever again. And like, I'm the person that Planescape's finally what broke me. That book series, that trio is finally what was like, I'm not getting these anymore. These are not of high enough quality. The monster manual in it, Mort's Planar Parade, is like 40 pages. No, there's not enough content here for anyone to find their value in it. So
Well, I'm gonna remain irresponsibly optimistic, as is my way. I think get to a point you have no choice. You have to improve. Shit or get off the pot.
Yeah, I'm a pessimist. I just don't think that's the case. I think things are going to continue getting worse, but
We'll
who
find
knows?
out.
Maybe the next edition makes it better. Commenters, what do you think? What are your biggest peeves about the books? What am I super wrong about? What are you like, oh no, actually, Sam, Prince of Apocalypse is a perfect module. There's no errors in it. I played it exactly as intended and had no troubles. You're just stupid. Let me know. Hit us up in the comments. I'd love to hear it.
Yes, please do. Yeah, other than that, thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. Leave us some comments below, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.